The Cold War. The Cold War, how the world divided after World War II. What happens when two powerful allies defeat a common enemy and then become rivals? In 1945, World War II ended. Nazi Germany was defeated and the world hoped for peace. But instead of peace, a new conflict began. A conflict without major direct battles between the two superpowers. A conflict fought through spies, propaganda, nuclear weapons, and proxy wars. This was the Cold War. For nearly 45 years, the world lived under the shadow of nuclear destruction. This is the story of how the Cold War began and changed the course of human history. Chapter 1. The End of World War II. By 1945, Europe was devastated. Millions were dead. Entire cities lay in ruins. Two nations emerged as global superpowers: the United States, the Soviet Union. Although they had fought together against Germany, they had very different visions for the future. The United States believed in democracy, capitalism, free elections. The Soviet Union, led by Joseph Stalin, promoted communism. One-party rule, state-controlled economies. Mutual distrust quickly grew. At the conferences of Yalta Conference and Potsdam Conference, disagreements over Europe's future became clear. The alliance that had defeated Hitler was falling apart. Chapter 2. The Iron Curtain descends. After the war, Soviet forces occupied much of Eastern Europe. Countries such as Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, East Germany came under communist control. In 1946, Winston Churchill delivered a famous speech. He declared, "An Iron Curtain has descended across the continent." The phrase became a symbol of Europe's division. Western Europe aligned with the United States. Eastern Europe aligned with the Soviet Union. The world was splitting into two rival camps. Chapter 3. The Berlin Blockade. Germany itself became divided. The Western zones were controlled by the United States, Britain, and France. The Eastern zone was controlled by the Soviet Union. Even the city of Berlin was divided. In 1948, Stalin attempted to force the Western allies out of Berlin by blocking all roads and railways into the city. Millions faced starvation. Instead of retreating, the United States launched the Berlin Airlift. For nearly a year, cargo planes delivered food, fuel, and supplies. The operation succeeded. The blockade failed. The Cold War had reached its first major crisis. Chapter 4. The Nuclear Arms Race. In 1945, the United States possessed the world's first atomic bomb. But in 1949, the Soviet Union successfully tested its own nuclear weapon. The arms race had begun. Both nations competed to build larger and more powerful weapons. Soon they developed hydrogen bombs. These weapons were hundreds of times more destructive than those used on Japan. The fear of nuclear war spread across the globe. Schools conducted nuclear drills. Governments built fallout shelters. People lived with the terrifying possibility that civilization could end in minutes. Chapter 5. The Korean War. The Cold War soon expanded beyond Europe. In 1950, war erupted on the Korean Peninsula. North Korea, supported by the Soviet Union and China, invaded South Korea. The United States and United Nations intervened to defend the South. The fighting was brutal. Millions died. After 3 years, neither side achieved victory. The border remained close to where it had been before the war. The Korean War demonstrated how the Cold War would be fought indirectly through regional conflicts. Chapter 6. The Berlin Wall. As East Germans fled to the West, communist leaders grew alarmed. In 1961, construction began on the Berlin Wall. Families were separated overnight. The wall became one of the most powerful symbols of the Cold War. For nearly 3 decades, it divided East and West Berlin. Armed guards, watchtowers, and barbed wire prevented escape. The world watched as one city embodied the global struggle between communism and capitalism. Chapter 7. The Cuban Missile Crisis. In 1962, the world came closer to nuclear war than ever before. American reconnaissance aircraft discovered Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba. Cuba lies only about 145 kilometers from the United States. President John F. Kennedy demanded their removal. For 13 tense days, the world held its breath. American and Soviet forces prepared for possible conflict. Many feared World War III. Finally, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev agreed to remove the missiles. Nuclear war was narrowly avoided. Chapter 8. The Fall of the Soviet Union. By the 1980s, the Soviet economy was struggling. The arms race had become extremely expensive. Reforms introduced by Mikhail Gorbachev opened Soviet society. Meanwhile, communist governments across Eastern Europe began collapsing. In 1989, crowds celebrated as the Berlin Wall fell. It was one of the most dramatic moments of the 20th century. 2 years later, in 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved. The Cold War was over. Conclusion. The Cold War lasted nearly half a century. It shaped politics, technology, military strategy, and international relations. It brought humanity to the brink of nuclear catastrophe. Yet it also inspired scientific achievements, including the space race. The Cold War ended without a direct war between the United States and the Soviet Union, but its impact continues to influence our world even today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more history documentaries.